Hi, my name is Tim White. I'm the Vice President of Engineering and Technology at Aerospace Industries Association. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with Miss Sonia Ebright, Deputy Director of DCMA. We chatted about DCMA and their strategy and structure, the changing nature of the defense industrial base, and how data is being used within the agency to deliver better decision making. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did.
Uh, um, we've already automated about 70% of our internal tools. We put them in an enterprise environment. We're looking at literally, you see out in the commercial world, when I take my car into the dealer, they come out with an iPad, they take pictures, they sign off things. We're looking at putting a rugged version of, it might be an iPad, it could be whatever the technology is. We're looking at that, putting that in the hands of our sensor network, our boots on the ground, who can then take the data and it goes into data lake, a data warehouse. What are the changing terminology? Whatever it will be in the future as we finalize this, so that we're getting instant information about our munitions, our weapon systems, our piece parts, what's available now to the warfighter instantly into the hands of those strategic leaders.
I think that's fantastic. And it also is a leading practice because in as much as you are executing on that, we as industry need to be doing the same. Absolutely, to understand how can I meet your needs? How able am I to immediately access what is in my inventory? And as you have demands that I can go and meet that, and then opportunities to start sharing that data between us so that you can look at it and say, I know where you are. I'm not going to ask you for what you don't have, but I know what I can get right here, right now.
And I see with this rapid acquisition, this push for faster, more safer, more new technology. I see the industry, stepping up to the plate. Absolutely. I think the communications have increased. I know from where I sit, I think we have a much better relationship now than we had, say, 10, 15 years ago, where it tended to be adversarial. Uh, I don't see that as much anymore. I think we're all in this together. And, I think industry at first, you see some of it's initial chaos, but it turns into very programmatic, process-oriented changes that the government's going through to improve and increase this rapid acquisition. And then it comes to the industries, and then we have to work together. And it's not just DCMA, it's the program side and the buying commands also that I think are working much closer with industry these days.
I absolutely see the same. If folks are online, they're not seeing the rest of the room. And what we have here in the room is an absolutely powerful convening of government and industry leaders that have come together over the last couple of days and talked about our individual problems that we're experiencing, looking at where are we common, how can we move forward together, and it's just been a fantastic collaboration that I think, to your point, 10 years ago probably just wasn't even possible.
And we've got other government representatives here. We've got the FAA, we've got NASA, we've got some of our OSW leadership, and we have industry reps from across huge changing, significant changing parts of the industrial base, and representing suppliers as well as the primes here. We've got a great distribution.
It's been powerful, right? And yet at the same token, on the same hand, I see opportunities to even expand the partnership to make sure that we're getting every voice possible. One of the things as people talk about speed, I'm hearing a lot about commerciality.
Yes.
And let's go commercial. And I hear about modular open systems architecture, MOSA. And I'm wondering, what is your perspective on commercial procurement and open systems, and how are you guys thinking about that from a DCMA perspective?
Well, from where we stand, we're more interested in making sure no matter what the deliverable is, it's quality and that it works. So if the movement is towards MOSA, we're fine with that. And then we shift to get the skill sets to make sure that we're looking at whatever that entails. We're we're kind of the trailing edge in some respect. The buying commands buy the weapon systems, they turn the contracts over to us. We're not really that leading edge of making those decisions, so we react. And we're very happy to react, but when we find out, we just want to make sure we get our people trained and ready to do that. Now, on the face of commerciality, we have a whole section of people who their job is to determine commercial item determination. We have a whole team, fantastic team. And we actually are very happy when we deem something commercial. And it comes down to show us your data, show us where you're using, and we had this conversation in the room earlier, and we actually heard from one of our NASA team members who was on the other side of the programmatic side about how we still needed some of the data. So I think it's a balance, but we are going more commercial. That's the reality. And whether we're going more commercial, we're going more OTA, we're going more MOSA, we're going no government inside at all. We're going to more 3D manufacturing. DCMA, our role is again to be the independent government agency there to protect the warfighter, make sure that whatever that process is that is having a deliverable at the other end, our job is to get ahead of it and to get to the far right and work with industry to make sure that that's a conforming item, that basically that the stuff works.
Yeah.
In the end, wherever the government leads or the buying commands lead, we're there. When we're there for the OTAs, for the piece of it that we have a part to play. Additive manufacturing, we're getting smart. We're sending our people. We're getting them trained. There's quite a few new technologies out that we are pairing up with either industry, or in some cases we've got a great class going on with NASA that we are doing the trainers, literally setting up some of the first classes ever for some of the new technology. And we're looking at it from a quality, how do we get in there and help identify anything that would stop that piece part, that component, that major end item from not working when it gets to the warfighter.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
You know, earlier today, you talked a little bit about needles in haystacks, which I thought was a powerful analogy, and it speaks to industry and government. And I'm wondering, could you give us a little bit of a flavor as to what you were talking about there?
I wondered how well that was going to be received.
I thought it was fantastic.
So when I used to be a director of contracts at Weapon Systems, basically the Navy Sustainment Command. And every time we awarded a contract, especially now we were awarding sustainment contracts, but this was also the same especially when it was any kind of developmental contract. And I always felt like we had to find the needle in the haystack when they had a proposal that came in, or when our requirements people had to look at the technological piece. We were always asking ourselves, what are we missing that's going to stand in the way of the contractor delivering this warfighter end item or this piece part? And it always seemed like the weight was on our contracts folks as we're writing this contract, because in some cases back then it was contract warfare. Yeah. And it was when you get the proposal, now you got to go digging. You got to go find out, did I get everything that I should have put in there to meet the requirements? Did I get the right clauses in the contract? And it often felt like that needle in the haystack. And to put it in context, when we were talking about this earlier today, we were talking about how could industry and government communicate better and talk more and help each other, so that if there's more than one needle in the haystack, if there's really things that industry needs that needs to go in the contract, we're getting that into the contract too. And it's not just the weight is on the government and the buying commands.
Yeah. I think it's interesting as well to think about haystacks in the context of, you know, in the room, our prime community has a shared supply chain, a deeply shared supply chain. And in fact, that supply chain is shared with other industries as well, right? And I may not be able to see the fact that that needle right there is common across many different other haystacks, if you will, and it's creating risk in our overall
Absolutely.
ecosystem. And we talked about this morning, we need to be able to more effectively identify those common needles because we're all vulnerable to the common failure mode.
I think when we go deep into this supply chain, and Steve Rooms from the FAA, I think we had this conversation about 3 years ago. We were talking about titanium, and it's one of the basic substances. I think we said at that point it was 154 programs used titanium. And when we were talking about just titanium alone, and this conversation gets spread out across many other piece parts and components, most of the primes and the suppliers did not know of the competition for that limited supply of titanium.
Yeah.
We recently DCMA, so we have a small group called our industrial analysis group that deep dives into the industrial base. And about, I guess it was about 6 years ago now, we did a deep dive for aluminum. And it's taken many, many years, but we're working with industrial waste policy in the Pentagon. And now you should see in the headlines here coming up, there's going to be a huge amount of money infused into the aluminum smelting processes. We went down from 20 aluminum companies down to 4, down to, I think they said they saved 2 or 3 of those. And then we were going to be out of the aluminum, the smelting, and our country was not going to have any more. And so we're building that back up before our industry loses that. That's part of that needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And the discussion that we had earlier today was great for me because I had, some of the primes in the room were saying, well, we know, and what we have to get better at between the government and industry is sharing what we know when there is, I'll call it a constraint, but it could be a huge problem. Like aluminum, titanium can be deal breakers. They can be weapons systems breakers, non-producible if you don't have, and that's just 2 elements that you need to build weapon systems. And we're not even talking about when you get to some piece parts and components that are common across. I know back in Weapon System Support Command, we actually had a whole section built on common. We would common items, and we called our division common because we knew that it went across all these Navy systems. Yeah. And that when we were procuring it, we were competing against all the different programs.
One of the great things that we've been able to do today is talk about opportunities for improvement and projects that we need to undertake jointly between the government and industry. And I just keep hearing this theme of making sure that the risks that are truly out there, that somebody knows.
Right.
Somebody knows. We need to be able to communicate them more effectively. And maybe that's the opportunity for the trade organization, right? To be the aggregator and an anonymizer.
Absolutely.
And we as a community need to be better at it.
I think, and we had this conversation, Siv and I just had this conversation earlier. I think that the trade organizations that you have such a great opportunity right now to bring in the voices of the various different industries, grab the synergy. We talked about quality. Quality is across all industries. Yeah. Grab that synergy, grab those common items and be a single voice. And right now, I truly believe the administration and Congress and the Pentagon would welcome a voice of industry coming together. Because it's a very powerful voice.
Yeah.
And the associations have the time to dedicate to pull the information together. When you look at the minis and you start with the eaches and you look at the minis across the buying commands, like we have over 3,000 buying commands, and I'm including program offices in that we deal with. And until we automate and we bring in AI and we bring it and our data standards gets up, we're not going to be able to do that. So I think it has to become from another organization, and it's probably the association.
Could well be. it's a pretty daunting task, but nonetheless, you know, if that's where we need
But
to
every
be.
one of your member companies has the same problems that we've been talking about today and yesterday.
That's right.
And the projects that the Joint Strategic Council is working on, to me, is like phenomenal. And I've said this before, and I'll say this on record. I think this body is into producing results. And I've been around the government since early 1980s. I tell my age there, but in the Cold War, and I don't think I've ever seen industry and the government working together to produce such, you know, quantifiable results.
Oh, I agree with you. It's been
And it's this body that's doing it, the Joint Strategic Council.
yeah, it's been really exciting. As I came into this role and I looked at my overall portfolio, and there's a breadth to it, right? But this is absolutely a shining star of what I can go and report back to our members, because we're really making some great progress here.
I think so. We're closing out projects, we're opening up new ones.
Yeah.
Looking for new projects.
Always looking for new projects, and also looking for new people to come and participate.
And new senators.
That's right. That's right. So going back a little bit, you talked about OTAs, and I'm interested to know, in this world of OTAs that are kind of in vogue right now and really powerful, tell me about DCMA's engagement there, and what are you doing and how are we responding?
So we actually have limited engagement in OTAs. And so the premise behind the OTA is you're getting the FAR, all of the laborious, heavy requirements out of the way. OTAs was an answer to faster, get out of the way acquisition. You don't have all of the tail that comes with the rules and regulations that come with the FAR and the DFARs. And we administer contracts. So we take contracts and the clauses that are flowed down into the contracts, and that's what we use when we're going into the contractor and the plants. That's what we're using to measure and to administer the contract by, as in addition to the big cost. So in OTAs, you're taking all that away. So the structure is taking away, and so it's really important how the original buying command is writing the OTA. And the premise behind the OTAs now, and it's still early stages, is you write an OTA, the buying command writes an OTA. They work with industry. There's money that's put on the contract. At the R&D stage, you don't have to compete it. But if you want to go into any kind of production and you can go sole source at their R&D. But at the prototype stage, you need to compete. So you compete for a prototype OTA, and then the third type is going in the production OTAs, and all of those, and I think it's a handful that I've seen, do come to DCMA, and most of those have now got FAR clauses. Some of the clauses that we were trying to get away from OTAs back into them.
Okay.
Because that's some of that structure, and I've heard industry say it also. We need the structure too, not just the government, but the rubber meets the road when we go to full production. And then the idea is that the government gets out of the way, industry builds the products, the weapon systems, to standards, quality, safety, production. You know, what they're produced for, how far they go, if it's a missile, planes, you name it. So it's going to be interesting, but we're getting pulled back when it goes into production. That's what we're seeing. It's just a handful but we also stay on top of it, and we also work with WAU, because we know that the services, 70% of the DoD spend is getting pushed now to. They don't have the people or the resources to manage long-term contracts or long-term. They're not called a contract. Long-term OTAs, we know at some point it's going to come back to the Defense Contract Management Agency. So we've stayed on top of that. But it's very hard when we get an OTA and they do. So we have been asked to maybe do one piece of the delegation, maybe the property piece. or the quality piece.
Interesting.
So we have been pulled into just little bits here and there where the buying command said, yeah, I need you to go into the plant and go check on this one function.
Mhm.
So we see a little bit, we're not playing that heavily, but we're staying on top of it because we know full rate production or even low rate production is going to come to us for the management and the oversight.
And it's hard, right? LRIP and full rate. I mean, good heavens, it's a different world. And if you've ever worked in it, it seems like everything is always going to go well, and yet it's a challenge.
And it really is the government trying to get out of the way. We hear industry when we say, you're the one slowing us down. It's your FAR clauses. It's the craziness. It's what you're asking us to do. The engineering change proposals are too hard. Can we just talk directly? Do we have to go through the engineers? Do we have to go through all these other government agencies? So they're trying to simplify, and the services have jumped on board with OTAs. The Army has awarded quite a few, as the other services. So we'll see when it goes to production. We'll see.
We'll see.
We're seeing some successes coming out of prototypes. So this may be a win. And we talked about this earlier. I don't want OTAs to become a 3-letter word.
Yeah.
There is going to be some absolute goodness that comes out of the OTA and the shift to the non-FAR clause, the prescriptive contracts. And when we capture that, we do need to capture that, and we need to keep it. And then if we go back to some more of the prescriptive and the FAR, the roll down, the DFARs, we just don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because the whole reason we're trying the OTAs and we've gone to OTAs is because there was a need there.
Yeah.
There was a need.
That's a great point. That's a great point. So maybe shifting gears just a little bit, if you go online and search for DCMA strategy, you get a really interesting first hit there. So last year you had some extra time, and so you had 2 jobs that you did for a couple of months. And during that time, you released the new DCMA strategy. And
Yes.
I actually, I thought it was great. Truly a great document, well thought out, interesting level investments that you're talking about. Walk us through a little bit. What were you thinking there? And tell us about that strategy.
So we've known, I think I talked about automation a little bit. We've known for the last 6 or 7 years that we had to change with the times. It's not just industry that has to change, government has to change also. And we've known that we needed to automate. And so I pushed for culture of automation, automating the mundane. And when I talk about automation, I am talking about some very manual processes, even in the HR, the finance world. We were probably really behind the times, and we didn't really have any funding to do this. So we did this with our citizen developers. We sent people to school. We call them they're our employees. We call them our citizen developers because they developed internal tools, and when we still don't have money, we turn to our citizen developers and say, I need a tool, I need an app. So we have built literally hundreds of apps. So we've been trying, as we look at all this, now we've got data synergy. So how do you take your organization to the next level? How do we make sure that all this automation that we're doing is for the good of the agency and ultimately for the good of the warfighter? So how do we do that? So we set up 4 lines of LOEs, lines of effort. I got efficiencies in my head and effectiveness in my head, lines of effort. And I assigned a champion to each one of those. And we specifically looked at cost and pricing. That's part of our mission. We have to make sure that the taxpayer gets what they pay for. We also looked at the acquisition side of the house. So I put my contracts director in charge of the line of effort for the contracting, and embedded into that and the technical director, which is another line of effort, is the automation piece. And I said, everybody needs tools, but we need to be moving in the same direction. We need to be moving towards unified insight that we're getting from the boots on the ground that ultimately will go to all of our customers. That's pretty huge. Our customers are our buying commands. Our customers are our contractors. Our customers are our bosses in the Pentagon. Yeah. So how do we create a data source that we can integrate into their systems. And so we have systematically taken our internal tools, plus we save money by not having all these individually funded internal tools, move them to the enterprise. We moved them to the procurement integrated in enterprise environment, PI. We've moved our surveillance tools into PEDREP, which is a Navy tool. I don't know the acronym for that one. We just call it PEDREP. And so literally our boots on the ground are feeding that. So our strategy is built on taking the tools, the outcomes, the mission outcomes, measuring them in each of the lines of effort, and then giving ourselves 5 years to build the tools, build the efficiencies, bring in AI. You know, sometimes AI is being used as a buzzword, but there really are tools out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll give you a great example of how we're using AI in just a moment. But then our fourth line of effort was take care of our people. I heard that this morning in some of our discussions. We've got to train our people. We've got to take care of our people. And so we set our fourth line of effort is literally to build our people, to be that workplace of the future. We heard, there's a competition out there. You'll have NASA's, everybody loves to work for NASA. You see it among the industry, the best place to work. And we were pretty far on the totem pole. I won't tell you where we were. And we're coming up, but part of that's because you don't do that unless you focus on your people. So that's where our 4 lines of effort came from. And I will tell you in our AI, our modernization, we have a lot of on the cusp where we're just about ready to engage true AI. But one of the things we're doing, we have our MOCAS, which is our now I'm going to try to see the acronym. I should have written it down. It's basically our entitlement and our pay system. So we pay out about $1.1 billion to contractors. When we sign the DD 250s, that form I was talking about, we pay about $1.1 billion a day just through those signatories on average. And so our system that we do this on is MOCAS. It was built in, I think it was 1959. It's older than I am. Built on Cobalt. This is our entitlement system. It's our administration system. It's our payment system. There is no way we can take this system down. So we went out and we did what we call a bake-off. We got about $1 million. So we're kind of a poor. I'm not supposed to talk about resources. We got about $1 million, and we went out to industry and we said, "Is there anybody out there who can translate Cobalt into a new program language?" By the way, we can't take and I'm simplifying this a little bit, we can't take our system down.
Yeah.
Can you basically fix it while we fly it? And we had about 6 companies come to our bake-off, and we paid them, and we had 3 companies absolutely said, "You guys are high, you're on drugs. No, we can't do it." And then we had the other 3 companies give it a try. One fell out pretty quick. The second to last one gave it a really valiant try. And then we had a small business that came through, and they are doing a phenomenal
I love that
job.
I love it.
So 5 years ago, we would have been asking for multiple billions of dollars to translate Cobalt and fly this entitlement system and payment system while we're using it. We would ask for billions of dollars. We're doing it with $68 million over 5 years.
What a success story.
So when we talk about our strategic plan, we
Yeah.
think about things like that. And I'm like, now I want to expand that. Look at the power of our citizen developers. Look at the power of our people. I tell our employees, we're gold. Our people are gold. Don't steal them. I'm not going to give you their names because I want you to steal them. And we've got these great ideas of how we can do this. And that literally was some ideas of some of our employees who said, "Hey, ma'am, let's go try to do this." We worked with our IT department, and it was a team effort. And so that's how we're using AI, and we are literally rebuilding MOCAS while you all are getting paid, and it's invisible to our users and to you all.
Oh, that's a fantastic
And it's happening
story.
right now.
I love that. As you think, you're talking about data, and let's talk a little bit more about data and expand it. You've told us about the stuff that you're doing inside the agency. Think about and comment on, if you would, What about data that lives in the contracting community and in the defense industrial base? What would you be interested in there? If you had that magic wand, what does that do for you?
Before I would try to use a magic wand, I would ask all of us, what is the problem we're trying to solve with data? Data and AI are tools. They are, and they're not simple tools, but they are simply tools. And first one I would use is one of our projects and was the supply chain illumination, because it's eating all of our lunches. So that was one of the problems I would tackle. And not so that I can see 100% illumination of everything. It's so we can figure out where the constraints are, and that if it's a supplier of a common item, piece part, component, that we can go in and we can use our taxpayers' funding that they give us, use our responsibilities wisely and infuse into the defense industrial base.
Yeah.
But you really do need data. So we need communication, we need sharing of the data, but then that's a lot of big data. We all have already a lot of big data.
We do.
We do not have the computing power. So that's where I would use AI,
Interesting.
is I would pull it in. And I would tell you that there's a lot of commercial AI out there. And it would probably be something built. But I mean, it's not, I don't know all the commercial AIs. Let me say that.
Yeah.
So there might be something that's built out there. Somebody might listen to this webinar and go, well, I've got one for you.
Yeah.
Probably get that from a few contractors.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's really got to be something that solves the problem for all of us and that we all benefit.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the common goals, common benefits to the taxpayer, we all benefit if we share the data and we figure out where in the industrial base do we need to concentrate taxpayer dollars to build it up, to renovate it, to modernize it, etc.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna need all hands on deck if we go to war.
You know, I just one of the things that I've become aware of over time is and I don't want to necessarily talk about resources of DCMA, meaning you used to be a lot bigger than you are now,
Yes.
people wise. I would love to hear, tell me a little bit about that journey, how you decided to address what is a shrinking employee base. How do you address that strategically and keep doing what you're doing at $1 billion a day?
So we decide what are our programs, what are our risk to the warfighter of producing a non-conforming item, and how do we set up that risk management? We look at where do we have contractors who have great track records? Do I need to send my people into those plants? Probably not. And when we're talking piece parts and components, now we actually have people who work in some of the major end item delivery plants, and those numbers, those people, although they shrink a little bit, those probably are going to stay, because that's putting the major weapon, that's putting the plane together, putting the tank together. So we'll keep people in those plants. But we also have about 4,000 people that we call under our geographic systems support team that are going out. Remember I said there was 18,000 contractors? Well, that's a lot of contractors, and our primes are really a very tiny number. And we have about 3,000 people dedicated to those primes because that's where we see risk. Well, then we have to risk rate all the others. And then we balance across the functions: transportation, packaging, property, contracts, quality, engineering, industrial specialists. And then we have our headquarters functions, our enabling functions. We have cut those functions because that's not where our risk is.
Yeah.
To deliver a non-conforming item, our risk is not in our enabling, so we have cut our headquarters. Our headquarters is about 6.5%. So we are way below industry standard. And then we also built a tool, a resource workload model tool, where we figured out asking what we're asking across all of our multiple functions to do, how many people should it take? And we have determined based on our should take, and we've had this model validated by first the Air Force and then RAND. came in and did a 2-year study to validate our model, and it should take us about 12,000 people. And then we have, for mission support work, about 8,500, and then we have some reimbursable work like for NASA. So we now have to decide, do I need an engineer? Do I need a contracts specialist? Do I need an ACO? Do I need a property? Do I need transportation? Do I need safety? I also have my safety center. So where do I need the next person? So we have set up across our 16 component heads, we have a talent management steering group where they get in there and they are prioritizing the hiring. So every increased external hire goes through a process, a matrix and a prioritization till we say which program, we have over 800 sites in DCMA. Where do we need and what's that function that we need? And then we also, right now, we're going through a process where we're prioritizing our programs based on risk rating. And then we're also prioritizing our development, because the way we've mitigated and I'm finally getting to the answer to your question. One of the major ways we've mitigated, not only through risk management, but through the tools that we're building. And by the way, we don't lay off anybody.
Yeah.
We keep our people, but maybe we don't have the right people, the right function in the right place. So that's that prioritization. So every time we hire a new person, we say, do we need an engineer? And we're looking at the life cycle of the contract too. We need engineers early on in the life cycle. What we don't really need are these engineers. We need our software engineers in certain contracts, certain programs, when we might not need them on our sustainment contracts or our peace bars or out in the field. So and again, we're going to be doing this with AI. We're going to move it a lot faster. We're in the building, the prioritization, the matrix. This is all linked to our strategic plan.
Yep.
Back to your original question. And we are linking it all so that we know that we're doing the right next hire in location A, B, C, D, or figure out what that location is. And then what should that function of that person, and then what grade? Do I need a supervisor? Is it urgent that my supervisor? Do I need to hire an auditor?
Yeah.
So it's very complex.
No, it sounds complex.
But we knew that if we didn't start, we would never finish.
Yeah.
And we're about 55% through the process, I think. It's a 5-year plan, and I think we're in the first year of the 5-year plan. I think we're gonna get there. So you can ask one of my peeps in 5 years. I won't be around.
Well, let me say, just one more question for me, and then I'll open it up to the group. But you had talked a little bit about FAA and NASA.
Yeah, partners.
Partners. Talk about that partnership, if you would, just briefly.
So the DOW is not a standalone. We're the only people who use our suppliers and our supply base and our industrial base. FAA and NASA, we have many of the same suppliers. We have many of the same common problems. We all use the FAR. FAA and NASA have a membership on the FAR Council, on the DAR Council. And so we figured out that they have data, NASA has data, suppliers, not just supplier data, but information. So we're pulling all of that into an enterprise environment. Again, no standalones. So I am on a hunt to get rid of any single employee who has stuff that only they know on their desktop.
Interesting.
We go after it. Nobody gets to be the single source of information. And it leads to decentralization, it leads to discord, non-standardized. I mean, I had industries, rightfully so, come to us 5 or 6 years ago and say, well, one of your contract management offices over here tell us to do this, and this one over here in this city says something different. What say you? And literally their training, their tools, anything they did was based on what the person before them trained them on coming up the ladder.
Yeah.
So we are standardizing and centralizing. You'll see that embedded into the strategic plan too.
Makes a lot of sense. Here in the room, any questions for Ms. Ebright?
We got one from Jay.
Ms. Ebright, thank you for making time out for us. You had the CEOs of our industry sitting here right now. What's a message that you really want our CEOs to hear today?
And
experience.
can I repeat the question? The question was, if the CEOs were sitting here from industry, what message would you want to deliver to them?
Me, the deputy of DCMA.
Indeed, you.
Thanks, Jay, for that whopper. I would say talk to your people in industry at the lower levels, because the devil's in the details. And then I think a lot of things, the problems that the CEOs are trying to solve, and that they tell my leadership, if we could bring it down a notch. I understand why they're getting the phone calls from the DepSec war. But if they could do anything else, communicate better and support this JSC, where we're looking across all of the industrial base to standardize, because help us help ourselves. We've got great integration through this team. And I'm not saying that it's just because the team is in the room, by the way. I am not. But we need standards across industry. Part of the problem that we've gotten ourselves into with this very complex way of acquisition that we buy warfighters is because we've got the economics of running a contractor, running a company, and then you've got you call it the economics of the government, but it's really not economics, but it's a congressional driven way of doing business, where we're all taxpayers trying to protect the taxpayer, but also build the warfighting machines. And yet there's so many areas where we don't have standards, where we could just say, let's all do it this way. And then we can concentrate on the ways and the eaches and the ends. So I would say, we need to communicate a whole lot more. I think CEOs need to communicate more with their lower levels in their companies. And I think the communication crossways and up. I don't get the sense that a lot of CEOs know the work that you are doing at your levels. And I don't think the good news stories make it up to their levels. I think there's the animosity that we saw 5-10 years ago, I think is still kind of permeating up at that level. And it really hasn't caught up that I think that we're working much better together, government and industry. I don't think that's caught up with them yet.
I think that that's true, and certainly an opportunity for us in industry to ensure that our upline is aware of what we're up to. I think that there's also this recognition as we work within the community that certainly each group and each company and each individual has a different equity. We have different responsibilities, and yet if we focus on where we do have common interests, that's where we're making the progress without ignoring the differences. And I think that that more so than anything has been the shift. Is I understand that you've got some things that you need to do. I've got different things. That's okay. But we both have this together to work on.
Well, one of the things that we get out of building these standards by bringing the government entities, FAA, NASA, we've got OSW, DCMA. One of the things that we get out of bringing that into the industry, and we're having these working groups that, you say are working every week on these different projects, is we're listening more and then saying, oh, well, what about this? What about that? So here's some examples of, I know how DCMA is listening more, is because of this working group, we have changed some of our manuals. We have opened up our ears to some of the discussions that industry. I don't know if Brian's still here, but Brian talked to us about the cars and our surveillance manual that we issued about a year ago. And so we're looking at that. So we're listening. We're getting direct feedback on our policies that are affecting industry that's flowed down through the FAR and the DFARs, but then we have our own policies. And so we're listening and we're making tweaks and changes, but we're also bringing data. So, one of the things Brian said was, hey, you're costing us more money. Well, I heard that from him. He said that a couple meetings ago. I heard him. And I went and I asked my team, how are we costing the industry more money? This is not the intent of our surveillance. Our intent is to alert and hopefully resolve problems at the lowest level for the corrective action plans and get those in place so we don't have quality escapes. And I did get the data back, and I need to share that with Brian when I see him next, that we have actually, over the last 9 months, decreased the level of corrective action reports by about 2,000 with our new surveillance manual.
Wow.
So did I get that right, Peter? You can correct me. I'm just on webinar. You can correct me.
Maybe time for one more quick question if we have one.
What do you see as the
Dale.
future state of the organization and perhaps industry?
That's a great closing question. What do you see as the future state of the organization and industry?
The organization being DCMA,
Yes.
I think our ties are just gonna get stronger. There's not a week that goes by that I don't get briefs from my programs about how industry found a mistake in the production process. Yesterday, I had a brief from some of my special programs folks, and we talked about 2 different programs. And we talked about identification of a problem that would lead to a non-conforming item. And about a week and a half ago, I had 13 of our programs come in and brief the Admiral and I. And in every one of those programs, we talked about what's holding up delivery, what's holding up production in some cases, or what's being identified. And every single time, it was joint problems that my people are telling me are being solved by industry, whether DCMA identified the problem first, or whether industry reps, their boots on the ground, identified the program. Every single time, the answer that I'm getting back is, this is what we're doing together. This is what, and I guess I won't say the company's name, this is what company ABC across these programs are doing. Here's how we're supporting. Here's how we're checking, identifying. Here's how they're showing us. So the communication is increasing. I think it's going to get a lot better. DCMA, I don't think we're going to get a lot bigger. I think we're going to get a lot smarter. We're going to get better at communicating. I think industry and DCMA, we're going to get a lot better at sharing data, because it's all built on trust. You'll share your data with us as long as it doesn't go out the door. So that's, and if it benefits you, why not share it with us? That's what FAA and NASA, we're starting to share all of our data. Yeah, you could say we're government, but it's all about the health of the defense industrial base is the reason we're sharing the data. It's not a gotcha. It's a, how can we help you? How can we identify where we can go faster, safer, more quality projects, new technology? How can we develop that, produce it, and get it out to the warfighter that much faster? That's what's behind this entire effort. And I see industry and DCMA, I see us working together a lot better. We're the communicators. We work with the buying commands. They delegate the contracts to us. We're right there in the middle. So use us, abuse us, help us. Let us help you. It needs to be an integrated effort. It really is not, it should not be adversarial. And I do think the associations have a role to play in that, because there's so many different companies bringing the voices together. And I do think the administration and the Congress will start listening when we all come together in a single voice. And it's really giving them a problem and a solution at the same time. Why would they not accept it? Why would they not embrace it? There'll always be questions.
There will, appropriately so, I
Yeah.
suppose.
And by the way, my team always calls me Miss Optimistic. That's my comptroller especially tells me I'm optimistic all the time. So
I'll take optimistic. I prefer it, right? Ms. Ebright, it's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Looking forward to continued collaboration. We've enjoyed our day to date, and we have additional dates on the calendar to make sure that we're connected. Yeah.
more work ahead of us.
Yeah,
good
much
work.
work
Great work.
ahead of us. And for those online, if you're not involved with us and you're not engaged with the collaboration that we have here, be sure to reach out to AIA and let's talk about how we can better collaborate and communicate. Thanks, folks.